My ramblings. This episode is your part two. We'll get to that. So anyway, as I was talking about in part one, we got this contractor out there, and apparently they're trying. Their project is to take these two line extensions and merge them into one. I'm like, that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense at all. Number one, we got two circuit breakers coming out. They just happen to be coming out at the same place. Then they go on to their own separate loops and feeds. And um, what these guys were trying to do was to do like a Boolean logic reduction. Hey, we got two lines coming out here. Let's turn them into one. There's a couple of problems with that. Number one, now instead of having two independent circuits coming out, which somewhere down the path, they could be linked, interlooped. We end up with one. Now, we don't even have a contingency now because if something happens in that short extension of line, we lose both circuits. Neither circuit has a way to get power out to the various loads that they fed. And if you remember your I squared R is your heating losses due to the resistance in the cable. Instead of having a little bit of current, going through each of the two lines with their I squared R, now we got it running through one line. And well, the current's higher, and since it's a square, we got significantly more losses in the line than if we just had two separate if we had two separate branches. You can do the calculation. It's in the book. I mean, it's not that complicated. So not only was somebody compromising our functionality, they're actually increasing what are known as our operational losses. And that doesn't begin to touch on the fact that somebody is on without they're doing unauthorized tampering of U.S. government property. So somebody was trying to put a stop to that. I don't know really. I don't think he was able to. Um, Maybe he did. I was so busy with a bunch of other things that I really didn't notice. You know, we had what we called the back nine. We had more than just two sections of um, of, of long lines. I think we had 800 miles. It's the 800 miles that I had done the modeling of the mathematical, determining the mathematical equivalent. Um, so we had the back nine. It really wasn't falling apart. It's probably 10, 15 years on it, but in a lot of areas we were already at, capacity. And, so there was some need to do some long-term planning. Okay, what kind of loads can we project out there? What would it make sense when the time came to to what capacity should we upgrade the lines? So I started this, I call it a program, maybe not the best word, but um, I started visiting all of our substations. We had peak demand meters in there that just kind of rose. And so I started a program where I would go around on a monthly basis to each substation, record what our peak load was, reset the demand meter, put the initials that, hey, look, this is what I'm doing now. If you want to know what it was before it was reset, just contact me. And so I was a few months in, a couple of months in, 3 or 4 months into having this accumulated data. The idea was to look and see, where do we have capacity? Um, you know, how well are our voltage regulators going to be able to function given the percent capacity that, when you're talking utility systems, you're talking diversified load, and there's all kinds of diversification tables and stuff. But that's really, I think they have week-long lectures on that at the university. So um, anyway, there's pretty interesting things I found out. I was trying to formulate a project. Do our people have the time, or should we issue a contract to somebody to go pole by pole by pole to assess the equipment that's on there and assess its general relative condition? But the place wasn't falling apart by any means. So That was just on the list of things to do. And I certainly didn't have the knowledge or expertise, to inspect the poles. I was a university engineering student, not a lineman. And I could look at it, I could see surface rust on it, but surface rust doesn't necessarily mean that it's eaten through. You needed somebody with expertise that had been dealing with this stuff for a decade or two to go up and assess it. Plus, you to get a close look, you either needed binoculars, which probably wouldn't give you all the angles if you really wanted to look at something, at a safe distance, of course. So that would have been something a lineman would have had to have done. But so I was kind of working on that stuff, and so I went in to talk to the new power manager. I think he transferred in from another agency within the Department of Interior. I forget exactly where it was, but I think it was another utility as well, because somebody had given me a book of their standards 6, 8 months ago, and I was steadily going through them, trying to assess, how does this match up with our standard way of doing things, and should we adopt this as our standard? They had all kinds of line clearance and stuff like that, which ours pretty much complied with. But all the particular details, you can't just switch automatically. There's all kinds of hardware considerations, and there's training considerations. If your people are using this equipment, now all of a sudden you want them to use that. Might be an easy enough switch to get them to use that, but now you got two different standards while you're transferring over. And you're sure as the hell not going to go through and change everything if there's no code issues or safety issues, just so you could meet somebody else's standards. And plus, you have all that hardware and stuff that you have in storage that doesn't make sense to throw that out and just to bring in somebody else's standards. So we're looking at, okay, how much of this do we want to adopt? How much does what we do match that? And should we adopt their standards, or should we come up with a variant of our own? So I went in to talk to this guy, and he was sitting in the main building at the time. But he was on the phone. I'll come back and talk to him later. I started to walk out, but then I guess it was his turn to talk. And he said, hey, some other department of the government shouldn't be telling the Department of Interior how to run their systems, and how to run their organization. And I guess he was in some sort of verbal battle with somebody that was trying to say, hey, you guys got to do this way or that way. And I said, no, you guys need to mind your own business. He didn't actually say that. But then it was the other guy's turn to talk, and I don't got time for this. I didn't know what it was about. Said, that's kind of weird. Walked out and went on to do some other stuff that I had to do. I think there's one more part to this. But it was really with this guy that there really started being an emphasis on me doing NEC stuff, NEC clearances, with 3 foot from a window and all of that. And it's bizarre, all the expense the Department of Interior brought me out here, all these projects I've done, all these improvements I've helped make. And I wasn't the only one working on projects. I wasn't the only one doing stuff. It wasn't like miracle worker stuff. It was solid engineering work. For some reason, they're buying into this nonsense that I'm an NEC guy. The only place I know that could have come from was the Department of the Navy, whether it was some civilians that wanted this job, the job I had, or just weren't aware that I had transferred, or whatever the hell it was. It was getting a little sticky. But we'll save that for part 2. All right. Be sure to tune in for part 3. I haven't given it a title yet. I will by the time I publish. But thank you for tuning in, and support the book.